for joining us in this episode, Christian Woodstock.
Oh, wow.
Level 5 churches, programming and relational discipleship, and are you ready for a change?
Okay, Danielle.
Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm great.
Great.
We got Dave and Shane again today.
I know.
Everybody's in for a good treat.
The best.
They're amazing.
All right, so mega church memories. Let's talk about what we've been through and how we came out of it and if we should still care about it and if it's
I thought you
okay.
were going to say if we should still be employed by a church.
Well, I've been thinking that this whole series. How the amount of times I've wanted to look up the statute of limitations on things is unreal. All right, so we're going to talk about Christian festivals, aka Christian Woodstock.
Right.
And in fact, the one that we had in Pennsylvania was literally like Christian Woodstock.
Yeah.
The one, the creation one.
It was like
in
the biggest there.
It was like a cow field or
Yeah,
something, or
yeah.
like a farm.
Yeah. I drive by it every time I go down to Washington, D.C.
So it's still a farm?
I don't know. I mean, I drive by the exit.
Oh, the
let's put it.
exit.
Yeah, I drive by the exit. But
It's probably an IKEA
Agape Farms. is
now. Oh, yeah.
Remember that? Yeah.
I forgot that. Okay.
Yep. So, yeah, that was creation was like one of the biggest ones, I think, ever.
I think
it was
so.
like, I don't remember the numbers. I would feel like it was 80,000.
Too many numbers.
90,000
Too many.
people that would gather in a field for, 3-4 days?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy. I was thinking back, the OG, I don't know if this is
That
the OG.
van.
But
Again, I'm back to the van.
Bring the
Sorry.
van back.
Yeah.
Well, it was not only a van, but like when we because we had a lot of kids.
Yeah, we had a van, a
to
box
camp,
truck.
like a moving truck.
Yeah, we had
to take all the supplies. 'Cause you
multiple
had
vans.
Tents and food tents and actual tents
Oh, I
and
hated
grills
it.
and
I
griddles
hated it.
and food. Like the food, I was thinking about just the mountain of food.
Yeah.
Because like you go
To
camping, think about a normal family going camping or whatever. You know, you got to take a lot of food to camp for 3 days for a week as a family or something like that. Think about like 80 kids, like the amount of food and that would like that you had to keep cold.
Yeah.
That you had to keep frozen
That's
or
what we had
refrigerated
all,
or whatever.
we had responsible moms with us.
Oh my gosh.
And
That is
sorry for the
crazy.
tangent,
Yeah.
Rachel Lusky.
Whoops.
Do you remember the shower Nazis?
Oh my.
At least in the women's bathrooms,
yeah.
there was like a shower. There's a lady with a whistle.
Let's.
She looks like Trumbull's.
You mean makeshift shower, right?
Oh,
or
yeah.
were there actual showers or with?
Oh no! And the women had like actual stalls.
So here's the thing.
Yeah.
I remember. Go ahead. Finish your story.
But she would have a whistle.
Right.
And
when
she
you're
would like,
done, you're done.
She would like scream, and like I was like, I never even wanted to take a shower. I never wanted to be exposed to it. I remember Lexi, Burnett, and Rachel. I remember them crying because it was like so traumatic.
Which when they're de-incentivizing showers at a youth outdoor festival where it's like 90 degrees.
What a mess.
This is not a good scenario.
No.
What I was
Anyway,
thinking
sorry.
about makeshift showers was I remember there were years where we took our own showers. And we would do a curtain out in the middle of nowhere, put a big thing of water up in the air with a hose and like let people, because the showers were so busy and like you couldn't wait for it and it was like really bad. So like we had, that was really something. I was trying to think back.
It was the logistics around the experience that were crazy.
Right.
But anyway, go ahead.
Well, just thinking back to like the origination of these things, like I remember one of the first I'd ever heard of, and I'm sure this isn't the original, but like was Urbana, which like the Urbana Festival in Illinois, which was like this missions. It was like a big missions thing where kids would gather and then the speakers were all around like give your life to missionary work or whatever. And, you know, so people would come down and kind of commit themselves. That was one of the first I remember hearing
I didn't
about.
hear about that one. Okay.
But we had a bunch around here. I don't know if this was just like a Pennsylvania or Northeast U.S. thing, but like we had Creation, which was I think the biggest in the country. There was a thing called a Live Festival, which is over in Ohio that we went to a few times. Kingdom Bound, which was up in New York.
Whoa, my brain just broke.
Remember that? Yeah.
Well, because do you also remember Kingdom Bound by the Bay?
By the Bay, which came to Erie,
local.
which was like the mini version. But yeah. So yeah, these were all things that we went to and frequented. And again, if you don't know, it was like all the hottest bands, the hottest speakers, and there would be like the main stage and then like 5 little stages in the woods, and you know you could see these like artists up close in this little not a super stadium field, but they'd be in you
could go meet them in a tent or whatever,
meet 'em in a tent
or see them in. It was like there was like a coffee shop vibe to some of the little ones in the woods.
Right.
It was cool.
The kids' tent, and they would always do baptisms in the pond, there and all that kind of stuff, and speakers too. I remember The older I got, the more I appreciated the speakers more than the music necessarily. But the biggest thing is when you had a whole group there was babysitting 80 kids for 4 days in the wide open countryside.
I mean, for real.
I know. And like getting everybody back for meals on time. And like, this is just like
it's an open field. There's no roads.
And
there's
forests.
No,
and I mean, like trees. Woods and trees. And like, you could run for miles.
No, it's like,
and nobody would miss you.
Past the whatever porta potty, take 2 lefts, and maybe you'll see our tent.
I mean, they had the rows because it would be, there was the field.
Yeah.
And then there was like the parking area where cars and all the tents and everything were set up. And so you'd go down these rows and rows, just miles of tents and
crazy.
And like it would be like row K. It's like, that's a 10-mile walk from here.
It was like you had to go to the bathroom. Sorry, forget it.
Just pee your pants.
Do you remember having to? I'm going to say this in a way that probably isn't true. Remember how we had to try to get our kids to not do a mosh pit for Point of Grace? Do you remember?
Oh my gosh.
Keep the candle burning. And our kids, we had all these straight edge kids.
Straight edge.
And they were losing. It was so awesome. We didn't try to stop it at all.
So
it was amazing.
For the uninformed, Point of Grace was the most non-mosh pit band. It was like, all female.
Yeah, 4 premenopausal women singing about God's grace.
Our kids were starting a mosh pit.
But then it was like audio adrenaline after them or something.
Right.
It made no sense. But that's what they did. They would like
they would mix them around, things together. Genres.
And like, you remember, like you had Audio A. You had a story where like there was like, we would take middle schoolers, and there was this, I cannot remember her name right now, but you'll remember the story. Her dad was there as well as like a chaperone, and you guys had to end up making like a human shield around her, and she was just like dancing during the song, but it was just like this mass of teenage humanity like climbing on your backs, just trying to have fun, but like she could have been trampled to death. I mean, she was oblivious. She was having the best time of her life. I mean, oh my gosh.
It's a metaphor for spiritual warfare.
I remember you using it that way.
Did I?
Or well, he did. The dad did, maybe.
Yeah,
the
makes
dad
sense.
did. But like, what a time to be alive.
Yeah. And you were coming into leadership at the time?
That was my first. I remember having a break at Wegmans, a local grocery store here, and you had called me, and I remember like I was out on a break and you were asking me like, would you want to come? You had like someone couldn't come or something or whatever, and I had to work, and I was like, it was like my first kind of like, I'm not going to be doing this for the rest of my life. So what do I care if they're mad at me if I take off work? And you weren't saying like, don't show up to work or anything, but I was like, so I kind of went back in and was like, hey, I'm not going to come to work. It was like a week and a half later or something like that. Yeah. And they were like not happy. And I was like, well,
fire me.
I'll be back if you want me back. It's like no big deal. But yeah, that was my first like real
look
leadership
what you did
thing.
for the rest of your life.
Right. Thanks, Wegmans.
Not Wegmans, but creation festivals.
Wegmans. But that was a wild ride.
Any lasting benefits? No. Okay.
Are there? They don't still do them. I mean,
they don't still do them.
Obviously, it's all the stuff we've been saying. Like there was something about the culture then that doesn't fully exist anymore. Yeah. Where it's just like, get in a van and go somewhere.
You know what?
Go do something hard with people.
I think about this, like even just like this idea of retreating.
Yes.
We retreated so much. Our leadership teams retreated, and we would go on a couple day, and we really don't. And I often think that would really benefit us to do a 2-day prayer retreat or do a 2-day something together, just because it's not really in the water anymore, and I'm not sure why, but this is kind of part of that vibe.
I actually had a conversation with somebody who's younger, and we have a thing we might go to in the spring with staff. It's just like a little conference thing, but we have to drive and whatever. And the person was kind of like, not in a rude way, but just kind of like, I don't really understand like the point of going. And I was like, okay. So I gave him like all the relational points for going instead of like the content. And he was, oh, that's an interesting point. And I'm like, yeah, it is. Like you'll learn stuff about them on the drive that you would never otherwise learn, or whatever. It's just we need to get back to that. Okay,
all right.
blah blah blah. Okay, that was good. Yeah, All right, let's move on to training notes. These are just kind of some leftover training stuff just based on what you're working on. And so level 5 churches.
Yeah, so this was something we learned from Clarity House when we first got connected to them, but I'm doing this I'm getting ready to go today, actually, to a training for pastors in Washington, D.C. I'm the main speaker for 2 days of a retreat. So
speaking of retreats,
yeah, that's true.
Take them outside.
They're doing it right. So, but we're talking about this. We're talking about our journey through Reinventing Church and some of that stuff. So it was the first time I've been forced to kind of get this material into a reasonable format that might be helpful for others. And so that was a good process for me. But anyway, one of the tools, the exercises, is looking at this level 5 church thing that, again, we were introduced to by Clarity House. But they basically break churches down into level 1 church, level 3 church, level 5 church. And there's 2 and 4 as well, but those are kind of subplots. But so the level 1 churches are really the 80% of churches in America that are declining. So that there's a big kind of subtraction symbol over that, where it's just like we're going down in numbers. It seems like we're losing ground. We're getting older, and the catchphrase for those churches is this idea of please stay. Yeah. They just want to say, everyone's leaving, please don't leave. Like, please stay at the church. Level 2 is plateau or declining. Level 3 is churches who are growing. It's generally up and to the right, but they're growing by addition. So this is about 16% of churches in the country. So, and the motto for these churches is please come. They're inviting people to, it's kind of this attractional model thing that we've been talking about. Most mega churches are in this category. Please come, please come, please come. The level 5 church, and the reason it's called level 5 is these are churches that are growing by multiplication. Yeah. So the level 4 would be called reproducing, but level 5 is multiplication. And the motto for these churches is please go, and not go like we want you to leave. Go like go out on mission and stay connected to the church. And according to their numbers, they're saying about less than 0.5% of churches are in this kind of multiplication mode. And I remember Dave Rhodes said, they're out there, we just can't find them.
Which makes sense.
There's a church in Hawaii that's doing rapid multiplication, church in Korea that we've probably heard about. So, and again, this language is please go. And so one of the things I found interesting about this tool is that they're saying really the magnetic pull from both sides is to level 3. Yep. Like it's the level 1s all want to be level 3s. And so they go to all the church growth conferences and how do we get people to come? And the level 5s, it's very hard to exist out there. Because there's not a lot of structures, systems, that sort of thing that help these partnerships to stay strong. And so it's not that the level 5s want to be level 3s. It's that the magnetic pull is back to this 3 because it's easier. It's easier to organize. It's easier to measure. And
that's good.
Anyway, so I think it's an interesting framework to think about how can, especially if you find yourself like in a level 2 or 3 church, how do we think more level 5? How do we think more multiplication and sending, and how do we encourage more and more of our people to go? And obviously that's kind of the heartbeat of these conversations that we're having. Yeah.
And I love the note about you have it here too, but how he talked about COVID showing us like level 3 felt so stable. And it was like, oh, we've got this. There's a method to the madness. Everything's working. And then it couldn't. Yeah. Like the engine could not run.
Right. So what happens when the building goes away, the show goes away, the gathering goes away? Are our people stable enough to survive on their own? And I think some were, but like by and large, I think a lot of level 3 churches were like, oh whoa, and we went to online ministry, but then the online was like, how soon can we get back to the buildings, because we need to we can't handle it.
And you have, I had even my own personal life too. You have several people, probably thousands and thousands of people, just opting out and just saying like, actually, I don't know if that church thing was adding to my life. Yeah. Other than more like stress to like,
One
volunteer or whatever.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So it's an interesting hinge point.
Yeah. And I do think, I just think it's such a call for churches to have these conversations that we're having around how do we equip more people? How do we send out more people onto their mission field, wherever that is, because we need more Christians to be self-sufficient and strong and stable and able to disciple others. And like, that's the whole thing that Jesus called us to. And we've created this whole mechanism that almost has undercut that.
Yeah. And there's
that self-sufficiency, because now it's the sufficiency on us. It's the sufficiency on a great worship set, sufficiency on an awesome sermon, a sufficiency on and if I don't get those things, man, I'm not thriving as a Christian or whatever. And holy cow, we've created a wrong engine for that, if that's what we're in.
For sure. Okay, yeah, that's good. Yeah, we'll put there's like a little chart for that. You can put in the show notes just if you guys are more visual.
Yep.
Okay. As we tweak our assimilation model to have more of a disciple-making focus and invent a multiplication funnel to awake the lake and reach our region, we're learning as we go. Each week, we want to have a topic that we discuss in front of you and a practical moment of learning that happened around that week. Today's topic is programming versus relational discipleship, and we're here with Dave and Shane, the co-founders of Clarity House. Hello. Fun fact about them, their favorite city is Erie, Pennsylvania.
That's true.
I just learned this, so I want to share it with the world.
Yeah. Right.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Again,
so good to be back.
Also, you could have changed your outfits.
I know.
Yeah, it's a little stinky.
I know. But at least we
Scuzzy.
kept all the dark.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's him and me.
We're pretty dark
all the time.
just generally.
Okay. Anyway. Okay. So specifically, why did you? Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, we're honored to have these guys here, and if you missed last week, catch last week. They're just every time these guys open their mouths, it's kind of gold, right? I mean, it's just
Not even kind of.
you've been so helpful to our church, and your ministry of helping churches has literally made a massive shift of our 140-year-old congregation, and who's already been through some massive shifts. Right. But this it has just been so monumental for us, and so we're really, really grateful to you guys. Yeah. And Shane, I'd love to start with you. Just like why do you do that? Why do you do this?
Why do we do what we do?
Yeah, why do you do what you do? Like why
that?
are you passionate about helping churches in the ways that you've helped us?
Yeah. Well, we think about at Clarity House, one of the things that we really focus on is around shared mission or shared vision that's fueled by disciple-making culture. And when I think about just my own story, like I'd go all the way back, and again, all of us probably could I go back to 15 years old, coming to Christ. I was being discipled, and I had no idea that that's what Rudy Sheptock was doing in my life. And he started introducing me and a group of friends to the ways of Jesus. And we'd been around the Bible a bit, but also to start seeing Jesus not just as our Messiah, not just as the model, but to actually start seeing through the gospel as Jesus as a movement leader. And when I look back now to what Rudy was doing then, and actually see the multiplication that has taken place, like I can name those group of friends and just literally generation after generation after generation that has come from that.
Wow.
And so that really started it, like for me, like that, like I can't unsee the gospels and I can't unsee Jesus as a movement leader and the capability and the possibility, and then what it has meant in my own life and what it has meant. And when I've hit roadblocks, I think about the first church I stepped into, large church, growing very, very fast. And all of a sudden I was like, why am I like continuing to hit these certain roadblocks, even though we're kind of white knuckling this growth, and realize I lost the multiplication and movement ways of Jesus. Yeah. And I had just stepped into kind of church as we know it, and kind of all the roles I was supposed to, be playing as a pastor on that. And so that's where I think the root of it is and drives it. And then when I look at what can be and what's possible, we love coming here because it's Erie, but we love coming here because we like the possibility, not only of what you guys have already done, but like what is still ahead of you and the heartbeat of that and the movement of that. Like you think about 4, 5, 6 generations of impact that are going to take place.
Thanks for saying that, for that backstory. I think that you guys in our first time together said something that got my attention. That you said, most pastors, and again, we got a lot of church leaders listening to this. Most pastors set out to make disciples and end up running a church.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of pastors resonate with that, because like that is what got us into this calling, first of all, and you've been such a reminder to us of that. And on that last note, like one of the things I was wrestling with God even before we came into our time with you, not only was, should we make this change right now, but it was like, I was asking God, what is Grace's greatest contribution to the kingdom?
Yeah.
And God, I can count on one hand the times God like met me in a way that's undeniable, and He said, "It hasn't happened yet. It's still ahead of us."
Yeah.
Right.
And we've had a lot of great days. We're an old church. We're a 140-year-old church. We've been through some amazing stuff together,
totally.
and to go, best days are ahead of Grace, and it may be ahead of me. Like I might not be here for them.
Yeah.
And again, generations down the road. So it's amazing the longevity of the kingdom of God, the power of that. And, so I think one of the things that kind of shook us out of our slumbers, like all of that,
yes,
and that stuff of just going, oh man, there's more to this. And it was one of the things that you presented, Dave. You talked about this kind of functional Great Commission, and I would love for you just to talk about that kind of compared and contrasted to Jesus' actual Great Commission, and kind of maybe what a lot of churches have settled into. And it is kind of out of that church growth model that we're kind of trying to break free from a little bit and adopt a new model. And that was just really impactful. So can you share with the folks
absolutely.
what that's all about?
And like you guys, I mean, I have a love-hate relationship with the church in a good way, I think, in that I see the church as, potentially the greatest hope, but also potentially the greatest hurt.
Yeah.
And so, we step into this work because of what's at stake. The church can be this incredible catalyst of hope, but it can also be a catalyst of hurt for a lot of people. And when we see people like you guys that are willing to take kingdom risks because you believe the best days of your church can be in front of you, I mean, I don't know that anything gets better than that. So that's what we love to do. So as part of that, one of the big ways that we talk about the problem today is that the church is caught in what's been called the functional Great Commission. And we've been talking about this, for many years, and we've named it in several different ways. But one of the ways we named it was in regard to we run a church and hope to make disciples versus we make disciples and we get to church. Kind of functional dyslexia, so to speak, of that. But in regard to the functional Great Commission, the functional Great Commission reads something like this: go into all the world, make more worship attenders, baptizing them in the name of small groups, and training them to serve 1 or 2 weekends a month. And when you hear that, you laugh, right? Because it's like, oh, that's what we do.
You cringe.
I almost cried. I did. I almost did. Like when you
Right.
guys first said it, I was like, I'm sorry.
Right.
And I like froze. I flight or freeze. I was like,
Yeah. And so, what we always kind of tag after that is it's not that, worship attending and joining a small group and serving is inaccurate. It's just that when you put it up against the true Great Commission, it's inadequate.
Yeah.
And so what I saw over and over again, the way I used to talk about it was we have a tendency to make converts that become volunteers that serve rather than disciples that become leaders that are sent out on mission. Again, you can hear, it's not that conversion's bad. It's not that volunteering's bad. It's not that those are all. But when you put it up against disciples that become leaders that are sent out on mission, there's something more. And it's not that, we've started in the wrong place, but we've ended in the wrong place.
That's good.
And so one of the things we talk about is needing to move the finish line to say, yes, come worship. Yes, be in a small group. Yes, serve. But that's not the finish line. Like, no, are you a disciple that's become a leader that's sent out on mission? And from my work of 25 plus years of helping leaders in this, I very rarely have come across a pastor who didn't get into ministry to make disciples. Most of them did, and part of our job has been just reminding them that our number one deal is making disciples and we'll get to church versus I feel the pressure of running this church hoping to make disciples. For a while, and I'd say before COVID, the major battle was to call leaders' heart back to the heart of disciple making. I actually think there's a new battle on the other side of COVID, and it's not a battle for the heart. I think COVID it revealed some things, and most pastors recognized, hey, what we're building is a bit more fragile than I thought it was. But as we begin to help with disciple making culture, the new battle is not for the heart; it's for the stomach. Do I have the stomach for discipleship. And what I love about the podcast that you guys are doing is you're saying, hey, we went through a process. Our hearts are for disciple making, but now here's our stomach. Like the last 2 years,
every day.
Here's what it costs us, and do we have the stomach to continue to implement? And I think that that's new battle, and I love that you guys are leading the way of just giving a front row seat to behind the curtain of just saying, man, these are some great ideas. Now rubber's hitting the road. It's costing us more than we thought, but it's also better than we thought in some ways. But we're just kind of letting you into the real struggle of what it looks like to have the stomach for disciple making in a way that continues to implement this.
Oh, wow.
That's good.
That's that messy middle stuff that we've been starting to define and feel for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and so when it comes down to that, I think that one of the confusing thing that's come into the church, probably out of the church growth model, but even before that, is just this idea of programs. And I think when we talk about I'm not making disciples, I'm just running a church. Like one of the main things is like we have found the finish line or the kind of the building block to be just programs that we're getting. We were sitting with a church a few weeks ago that's kind of in a transition period, and we just use the language of like what if you thought steps and not programs, or what if you thought about how people actually grow and develop instead of, are we doing the women's event? Are we doing the men's event? Are we doing the youth event? Are we doing I think a lot of pastors and churches find themselves in just like, we're just throwing out a series of programs, hoping that people come. Mm-hmm. And, if 20 people came this week and 15 people came last week, it's a win. And, I guess I would just ask you guys, like, how do we get here? what is that? How did this happen? And maybe just offer some insight about, how we've arrived here and what do we do about it?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we could lean into is a metaphor that we use from a dear friend of ours, George Bullard, that he introduced years ago. And we've kind of adapted it a bit, but we call it the trek up ministry mountain and things. And if you think about your church like a car, that when a church is starting, it is all vision. And so who's driving that car is vision, right? Like we've got a hope and a dream, that God has
Sometimes
put a dream in our heart.
Have, right?
That's all we have.
Yeah.
We've got no building, no budget, nothing else, right? Like we just we want to bring the gospel to this particular community or whatever it might be. And which is fantastic. As soon as you have vision though, over time, right, it starts collecting people, right? People latch onto that vision. And we would describe that who gets into the car then oftentimes is relational disciple making or disciple making relationships. Mm-hmm. And so you've got, visions driving, you've got relational disciple making is navigating, which is fantastic. The more and more people you pick up over time though, suddenly there's a new passenger that has to get in the car, right? And this is just a reality. Like we don't want to this passenger isn't a bad passenger.
That's good to say, actually.
I think it's important because that passenger's name is programs, right?
Yeah.
And again, it's almost like, programs are bad. Well, I think about programs. This is how we've chosen to organize our relational time together, right? So. Good. Pastor now here's the big question. Does when programs get into the car, does he get in the back seat or does he get in the front seat? And oftentimes ends up saying, you know what, I'm gonna get in the front seat, which then puts relational disciple making into the back seat.
That's fair.
Oftentimes, right? The best place for programs to be sitting is actually behind disciple making relationships. And supporting them. Mm-hmm. So continues up Ministry Mountain. So now you've got vision driving. You got programs. Possibly in the passenger seat now. Relational disciple making is moved to the back seat if you're not careful. Oftentimes, what happens, and so over time, you pick up a fourth passenger. And that passenger is management, which is accountable systems. It's a good thing, right? As things continue to grow, right? You've got these, accountable systems. Don't think of names. We always say, don't think of people's names on that.
Oh, we picked up.
That's right.
I'll tell you exactly who we picked up.
It's actually management is important. Those accountable systems and structures are important when they sit behind vision to support vision. But as management gets in, oftentimes what happens, 6, 7, 8 years, 9 years in, is vision starts getting tired, and vision says, hey, I'm going to step in the back seat and take a nap. Management gets in the front seat. And when management gets in the front seat, white knuckles that steering wheel going, this is where I was always meant to be. And again, never once, right?
Awesome.
Never necessarily once relational disciple making in the navigation seat, because relationships are messy. Right? So it's going to put programs right there always alongside that. And so here we are, like that becomes the place where it's like now vision's in the backseat of asleep. Relational disciple making also has taken a nap, or has at least taken a back seat to programs. And many times, I've been talking about it, is that oftentimes when you've lost a sense of vision, your vehicles, your programs suddenly become your vision. And what you were describing, earlier, Derek, is often one of the indicators that that's happening is we're talking more about our programs and putting more emphasis. If we could put the gas onto the a pedal down on our programs, get a few more people into this, or a few more people into this, a few more people into this. Well, that's actually our vehicles have become the vision.
Yeah.
And we're hoping then the more activity people are a part of, the more environments they're a part of, it's going to result in spiritual growth, or it's going to result in them being disciples that make disciples.
Yeah.
And oftentimes what we end up describing is that it's very easy when you focus on the programs that you may create good churchmen and women, but you don't necessarily create great disciples that can make disciples.
Yeah.
One of the ways that's a key indicator for a staff team is to really ask the question, do I feel more like an event coordinator or administrator than a people developer? And, if
that's good.
If that's the case, then probably we've got some things in the wrong seat. And I think, I just want to say this, I think it's important here on this podcast, because I think we did make a mistake in the missional movement to basically just act like management and programs were bad, and we just need to kick them out of the car.
Yeah.
And what we would say is programs is a great support for relational disciple making. It's a bad substitute for it.
That's good.
Management is a great support for vision, but it's a bad substitute for it. So we're not saying kick them out of the car in any kind of way. They have
them in the right seats. Yeah.
They have an important role to play.
Yeah.
And every position in the car is incredibly important. But sitting in the right position is what's primary to say. We're leading with vision in relational disciple making, and programs and management support that.
Yeah, that's good. Super helpful.
Excellent. So, and I know, when we start talking about relational disciple making, then there's this like, okay, well, remind me how we do that, because it's, again, if you've been running a church for so long, and if you've got programs up in the, and management, it's like, okay, how do we get back to that? And I think what happens is a lot of churches and church leaders kind of can just default to, again, more information dump. Here's some information, and that's part of it. Right. But that's part of a bigger picture. So can you kind of maybe describe like what does it look like? What are the components of like one of those disciple making relationships that would help people to maybe just have some handles around it?
Yeah, I think a large part of it just comes back to accessibility. So oftentimes, for a leader, discipleship isn't about doing different things. It's about making everything I do accessible to other people. So it's not about doing more things. It's just about how do I invite people into what I am doing so they can see it. Or, if I need to shift up some of the things that I'm doing, recognize I'm actually not wasting time. I'm actually spending time differently in a way that buys me back time. So the only way you get more time is if you either hire someone or you disciple someone, right? And oftentimes our budgets are limited, but disciple making's not, because if all of a sudden you can do what I do, I actually get some of my time back. And so for me, again, I know last time we talked about 1 Corinthians chapter 4, you have many teachers but not many fathers. And he says, imitate my way of life. It means that I've got to do more than disseminate information. I can give information through teaching, but I've got to open up my life for imitation, which always brings that big question back. Do I have a life worth imitating? And one of the things we say when we're talking to pastors a lot of times is that the first thing that needs to happen for your disciple-making culture to take root is you need to go get a life, right? I mean, because we've lost our life somehow.
Yeah.
And if you don't like your life, you're never going to invite anyone into it. And so part of this is how do we have a life worth imitating and then give accessibility? Yeah. And so I can do that in both informal and formal ways. So part of it is just, who is the Lord bringing toward me that's a person of peace for this season that I could invest in so they can do greater things in me. Like that's kind of, and then how do I make my life accessible to that? But then, on a more formal basis, it is saying, if all I am is in public space with people, then I'm not going to get the opportunity to provide influence the way that if they had greater access. So I got to start thinking, okay, if people only encounter me in public space, which is over 100 people, well, what would it look like for them to encounter me in social space, 20 to 70 people, or personal space, which is 10 to 12, or more private space, which is 1 to 3. And so you notice in Jesus' ministry, he uses all 4 of those spaces. And I end up trying to do what Jesus did in 4 spaces in 1 space.
Right. That's good.
And it's incapable of supporting that. So I have to start, thinking about my life and say, how am I doing the 20 to 70? How am I doing the 10 to 12? How am I doing the 1 to 3? And then, on a formal basis, say, what programs might even support those kinds of engagements in my life. So when we talk about training, we're usually talking about that social space of 20 to 70 people. And, for a pastor like you to have access to you in that room versus, 1 on 1,000, that's a different accessibility to you. And I'm going to get different things from you. And then, personal space and then that kind of private space as well. Can't do it for everybody, but doesn't mean I can't do it for somebody.
Yeah.
And if you make that the value, that it's not we're all trying to get a little bit time with Derek, but across the culture, everybody's able to ask, who am I giving extra time to, in essence? Who am I pulling close and giving access into my life? We have more and more of our leaders, more and more of our disciples beginning to ask that question. You really start to change the culture.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, and I think if I know we gotta wrap her up here pretty soon, but this concept of, as we think about the disciple making culture in our churches, and I think again, as pastors, ministry leaders are listening, going, well, but you don't know my church, or I'm not sure, or we've got X, Y, and Z person that would never let me make changes or whatever. One of the concepts you presented to us was this idea of a crowd cloud. And I think it speaks to kind of the potential of every church. And can you just kind of share that concept with us?
Well, the question to just begin with, when you look out on Sunday morning, what do you see? Do you see the crowd that gathers, whether that's 50 people, 100 people, 1,000 people? Do you see the crowd that gathers, or do you see their crowd cloud? And the idea of the crowd cloud is just around, and sociologists would say that in anyone's sphere of influence, anyone's relational network, there's somewhere between 30 and 300 people. The average person, that's around 100 people. I mean, you just think about that in your own life. You just looked at your own, kind of the domains of your life, and you kind of mined out. I mean, just sit down on a napkin. It's a fascinating, on a napkin, and just go, when I look at my family, when I look at my neighbors, when I look at my workplace, when I look at the church, when I look at my hobbies, just my kids' school. When you think about the people, you'll be amazed at the mission field that God has already placed you in, every person in your church. This is true. Yeah. And what that means is, and this is what's, I think, so powerful with that, is if we're training people not just to help, hey, get one more person into our crowd so they can hear us on Sunday, but if we're training people to reach their crowd cloud, then that means if you're a church of 100, you have a potential gospel impact of 10,000, which is incredible. And again, where does that begin then? Well, where does that begin? If I pull a few close, help them mine out their crowd cloud, help them identify the persons of peace, and help them begin to do the same thing. How are they reaching that? And that over time, your collective gospel impact is way bigger than who shows up on Sunday morning.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, just think about that mathematically.
Yeah.
If you have a church of 100 and you have 10 people that you make disciples, that actively reach their cloud.
Yeah.
That's 1,000 people.
Right.
That's more than your congregation of 100. That's 10 times.
Right.
Through 10 people.
Right.
So,
That's
we
crazy.
always think, we got to get one more person in the crowd, but actually you can do more with 10 disciples than you can 100 people in your congregation.
Yeah.
And your church's impact is way more about the disciples that you're making reaching their cloud than getting one more person in your crowd. And it's a 10x kind of factor. And so I forget that. I have to remind myself because, again, I've just been trained to look at the crowd and to perform for the crowd versus saying, no, actually the potential of our ministry is in the few. And who is it that we're actually investing in a significant way that now can reach their cloud? And that's the unlimited potential. Every church planner knows that, by the way.
Yeah.
We just forget it when we get into an established church.
Sure.
Oh man,
Wow.
that's good stuff. So I want to just do a shameless plug here. You guys don't know I'm doing it, but like I would just say any church leaders listening, like if you get a chance to brush up against these guys in any way, bring them in, get them in your sphere. It has been so Can you? To this?
We're locking them in a basement, so it will be hard to get them.
We have the same thing all
they have not left. We're doing a misery thing here. Yeah, not really. But,
Misery.
I don't know. That's just what popped in my head. This is what happens.
Yeah.
Don't ever ask me questions off the cuff.
Yeah.
No, but I would say, just reflecting on our time together over years now, just watching people, especially like who have been in ministry like long term on our team, the impact that you guys have had on that the whole team obviously, but that specific group of people, they're just leaning in more. They're just, me too. It's like it's obviously a new vision, but it's just a new look and lease on what our potential can be and what our impact can be in the kingdom. And you guys gave that gift to us, and God used you in really amazing ways.
Yeah, I would summarize and just be like, I feel like a day in a room with you guys is like light bulbs coming on over and over and over again in places that maybe have gone a little dark.
Yeah, for sure.
Or have, there's a shadow there that crept in, and just like, oh yeah. It's just these incredible, and I'm sure people got a sense of it on the podcast just listening to you. But anyway, could you talk about where people could find you? Like if people want to look for you and just go, how do I get in touch with those guys, or I want to hear more, I want to read more, whatever.
clarityhouse.us. So clarityhouse.us.
Nailed it.
Okay.
There it is.
Yeah.
And you can reach out to their email contacts are there on there as well.
Great. Yeah, we'll have all stuff like that in the show notes as well. But really, really appreciate it. Hope we get to talk on here again. That would be cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we're avid listeners, so
All
know
right.
that too. Like we truly
fans.
love
Yeah.
like what you guys are doing, and in fact,
thanks.
what you're doing for the church on this, and going, hey, we're taking these moves, and as we're making the moves, allowing other people to learn along the way.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Okay,
There
love
they
those
are
guys,
again.
right? Yeah.
There they go again.
More and more. If we can we have them on every time?
Yes. I'll call them even on
I
my
don't know
phone.
if
I'll just hold my phone up, and they can do it. No, guys. No. Say it this way.
Listen, I just know that Ministry Mountain thing was such a revelation to me. Thinking about how programming can squeak in there. We were talking earlier about how level 3 churches, kind of draw people back to that programmatic side of things, and it happens so unintentionally.
Oh, yeah.
I think. And it just we just get consumed with running the machine.
Right. I literally have started to think of myself as just like this person with this like overgrown limb of just like this muscle memory of just like,
Right.
yeah, do an event.
Right.
Yeah, do a class.
Right.
Like it's just
It's
like
true.
It just my mind. I have to like literally stop myself.
Yeah.
And I'll sometimes be sitting in a room just like myself. I know what we can do. I
Right.
know what we can do, but it's
Right.
not.
It's not the
right.
right thing to
It's
do.
not the right thing to do right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
I have we'll introduce it in a future one, but I have I heard an interesting teaching on this idea of equipping. So the Ephesians 4 where it says equip the saints for works of ministry, what that actually means, what that word actually means, and there's kind of 4 parts to it. It's really, really, really profound. But it's a shift. What I think is like our first instinct is to go, we could create a program for that. I think when we think about equipping, if our first instinct could be, who could we equip for that? And here's what equipping looks like.
Yeah.
Man, that's a big,
That's
it's
great.
one we have to learn. Like, you're
We're
self-identifying,
yes.
and I do too.
Yeah.
Like one of the things of this whole podcast is like, this is the water that we have swum in for the last 30 years, and to like try to make a shift at this point is hard.
It is hard
because we have stuff that's like, well, no, you just do this.
Yeah.
And I was like, no.
Yeah, just follow the tides, follow the current.
Right.
And now it's like, swimming against all
Anyway.
that. Anywho.
What happened this week?
What happened this week?
Danielle?
So, actually, last week I was at a Leading Smart gathering in Dallas, Texas with Tim Stevens. We'll put his link in the show notes, but he does this gathering 2 or 3 times a year. And like talked about last week, just very discussion based, very like learning from your peers kind of a thing. He has a partner in his ministry. Her name's Holly Tate. She started, she worked for Vander Blumen.
Yep.
She worked for Leader. And she, during the whole thing, she's had her own thing called the Ready Network. And she just recently left Leader to do that. And so we'll link that too. But so she had this really, I just thought it would be good for this podcast. She has this really cool framework that she kind of tried out on us just to see if it like resonated. It's not fully developed, but I thought is developed enough that it could help people. Like if you don't want to go into like a huge strategic planning initiative, this could be a way to know like, are we ready for a change? What are some baby steps we could take to like explore it? I just thought it was kind of cool.
That's great.
So it's Ready. So READY. It's a little acronym, as I'm sure you'll love. The pastors.
Absolutely.
And I think the other thing that's cool about this is it doesn't over-engineer it. It can keep it like real simple if you want to just take baby steps, which I thought was kind of cool. So R is reality check. So this is where you like bring all your data together, get everyone in the room, and be real honest with like where you are. Real honest conversations about where you are.
Jim Collins would call that confronting the brutal facts.
There we go. Thank you, Jim.
And good to great.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's reality check R. E is evaluation. So this is where you go deep into, you literally get it on paper. What's working, what's not working, what's missing, what's confusing. My speech. What's confusing. And you just kind of get a big like whiteboard going of like those 4 categories. And then A is action plan. So you use those categories to find patterns and develop and choose like 3 to 5 priority areas. So one thing she said was just, this is the place where you would start to define like set and measure goals around maybe like 3 areas that you want to kind of change a little bit. And that's A. So D is delegate. And that is choosing an owner and making deadlines for each of those 3 to 5 pieces. This is very simple, but it's like
it's great.
Breaks it down.
It sure does.
Owner and deadline for each one of those pieces. And then one thing, the last thing is why. It's called the yes barometer. This resonated with me. I don't know why. I think it's because maybe it's because it's something we tend to struggle with. But like, what you do is then every time you come up with ideas that are outside of this action plan that you've made, you run everything back through this. And that sounds, of course you would. But sometimes you just have a really good idea and then you just go chase after it. 5 years later, you're doing something you don't even know why you're doing it.
Yep.
So that's it. So Ready. So her thought was, and again, this is all just still forming, but like it's kind of like it could also be like an annual check. So if you're already in a planning thing, whatever, you could run this Ready thing in an afternoon with your team.
I love that.
And like, kind of resync up. I thought it was cool. I thought she's a good leader, super insightful. But
that's great. I think sometimes those simple strategic questions that like help you process an idea or process a season of time is really helpful. I think that's a super great tool.
Yeah, I'm excited for her to.
Yeah. So it's not published anywhere yet necessarily? Yeah. Okay.
She might have like a blog on it or something, but we'll get a link to her website.
Yeah, that's great. I love it.
Yeah, she's great. Okay. All right. So I think that's it for today. We have 1 more episode. Is that right?
2 more.
2 more episodes.
Yep.
I should never do this. I always say,
right.
we have 8 more episodes. You're like 6. Yeah. Got it.
No, we have Diane Wright, and then we have
we
have a wrap up.
Sweet. Diane's going to be
wild?
good. That's
Yeah.
next week. Okay. So if you like this episode, tell us by leaving a rating or Guys, goodbye. Just kidding. No, leave a rating and review. Yeah, like we said, Diane's coming up, and then we'll do like a final kind of wrap up. So you don't want to miss those. You can find detailed show notes and related resources at DerekSanford.com/reinventing church. That's where you can also subscribe to his weekly newsletter and then stay in touch between seasons as we're coming to an end here. That's about it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.